All right, you guys, so I get this question a lot. Hey John, I'm thinking about getting into the Harley Wheelies. Do you recommend Dyna or Sportster? And after writing this, I'd say 100% if it were me personally and I was going to do it the So that was my first like decent sit down wheelie. It's been a long time since I've done it, and I haven't really even sessioned this thing for wheelies, but unfortunately this peg came loose. Alright, hey, buenos dias, ¿qué pasó, you guys? John's Moto Garage. Welcome back to the channel. Today I have usurped, I don't know if that's the right word. Today I've taken Jackie's Iron 883 Sportster, highly decked out and upgraded and modified, and I'm gonna do a little bit of a wheelie sesh. I don't really want to thrash this thing too bad, but I'm gonna spend a little bit of time on the saddle to see how this bike stacks up with the Dynas when it comes to doing Harley Davidson wheelies. So a little bit of background: I've been in this game for about 2.5 years. That's the Harley Wheelie wannabe game. My first bike was a 2013 Street Bob. That's the fuel injected 103 cubic inch engine. Then I went to a 2000 FXDX 88 cubic inch Dyna. That's the bike I currently ride and prefer. And now we're trying out this 2016, I believe, or 17 Harley Davidson Iron 883. Now, this has been bored out to the S&S Hooligan kit, which I think is a 1250 or 1275. So it's not stock. Additionally, it has the chain conversion, into one exhaust, progressive suspension in the rear. It's got something in the front as well. So it's not a stock Iron 883. I have ridden a stock Iron 883. Those come a little bit slammed and lower in the rear, and I didn't have any luck getting that up on one wheel, but I also didn't really go and session it a whole lot. Anyway, today's video is really just to see how does this stack up to the Dyna. At the end of the video, I'll just share my thoughts, personal opinion, because a lot of people, I think, debate between, do I go with the Sportster or do I go with the Dyna, which is best and why? And I don't think there's one correct answer. It just depends on the individual and what you're ultimately looking to achieve. I'm gonna put this one to the test, and then I'll share with you what I think about it. So let's jump onto it. Hopefully this foot peg being loose doesn't screw us up too badly. Now obviously with the Sportster you've got some different options, because you've got the 1200, you've got the 883, and you've got a lot of different platforms. But if you're working with the 1200cc engine, I think that's probably going to be the easiest option right out of the gate if you're looking to do the wheelies, just because it's got a little bit of extra oomph, that extra power to it. These Sportsters are smaller, so if you're like me, I'm 5'8", I'm not a really big dude. This bike feels like it fits a lot better being a smaller bike for the wheelies and everything, because this bike for my height fits perfect. It sits real low to the ground, it's a lot more narrow, and everything's just a lot closer. The bars are closer to you. It's not as big of a stretch, if you will. One thing I'll say, this bike being the fuel injected, a little bit newer, and the fact that it's obviously not stock, it's real twitchy. It feels almost like a fly-by-wire throttle. I don't think that it is. This keeps going loose on me, so I don't know how much luck we're gonna have here, but we'll do what we can. So the throttle sensitivity, definitely a little bit different on this Iron 883 than my Dyna FXDX. Ah, there we go. So yeah, this thing feels twitchy, almost like an FC09. The throttle is just real sensitive. But every bike's going to be different, so you just got to get used to it. Like for example, the Dyna Lowrider S, that thing is super twitchy, super powerful bike, so that's going to be different than a Dyna Street Bob. As far as the wheelie itself, I definitely feel more comfortable on this. This feels a little bit more like the Grom or the DRZ, for example, jumping on this and getting up into a wheelie, than on the Dyna, which feels just a little heavier, like I said, slightly more spread out. Yeah, So I'm still not quite back there to the balance point, but you know, this has been a pretty short session and I'm already feeling a lot more at home on this motorcycle than the Dyna. To try a staggered. I've been doing them sit down. Let me try a staggered. Oh, one thing I'll note, getting the back tire to stick, I'm using the same technique that I use on my FXDX. So I jump off the seat a little bit. I don't give it a ton of gas initially. I just barely open up the throttle, jump off the seat. As I dump the clutch, once I feel the back tire has traction, that's when I roll through the throttle and open it up more. That technique I learned on the FXDX. So that definitely comes up easier. There we go. Just like any motorcycle, you got to get used to the bike, kind of get a feel for where balance point is. Every bike's got its little quirks. I'm inclined to say this bike's a lot easier to get started on than the Dyna, for just the fact that it's smaller, more compact, for all those reasons. But at the same time, I've put a lot of work in learning the technique on the Dyna, so it's kind of hard to say 100% for sure. Bike's really wanting to pull for some reason to the right, actually. I don't know if it's just the way the street's set up or what, but it's definitely easier to see behind, or see beyond the tank. It's definitely easier to see beyond the tank because it's not so wide. Yeah, the sit downs for this on this bike are a lot easier for me. A lot easier. All right, I think I've had enough of a session to kind of give you my overall thoughts. So let's pull over and just chat a little bit here. All right, you guys. So I get this question a lot. Hey John, I'm thinking about getting into the Harley Wheelies. Do you recommend Dyna or Sportster? This is the first Sportster I've ever stunted or done wheelies on. I always assumed or presumed that the Sportster would be the better bet for getting started. Just because it's smaller, it makes more sense. And after riding this, I'd say 100%, if it were me personally and I was going to do it the easiest way, the Sportster would be the way to do it. So for what I'm talking about, when I started wheelies in general, I started with a little pit bike, then I moved up to the Honda Grom, then I went to the DRZ, and then I stepped up to Harley and, you know, Yamaha MT-09s, FC-09s, stuff like that. So I started with like the smallest, easiest bike to practice on. And so when it comes to the Harleys, I 100% think that the Sportster, just based on my limited exposure thus far, and what I know and what I've heard about the bike, I think this is the easiest way to break into the Harley wheelie game. Get used to a heavier bike and not have all the same hurdles. This bike just feels so much, it feels a lot more comfortable. Another good thing with the Sportsters is, for the most part, these engines, you don't have to do as much on them as far as like mods. For example, with the Dyna engines, you have to do like the oil pan mod, put the oil pickup at the back. To my knowledge, there's no mods you have to do on this engine when it comes to stunting it. Obviously, this is just a very preliminary, kind of early on thoughts, because this is literally like the first time I've ever come out and really sessioned on this bike. But I really do like it. It's still easier to handle and maneuver than my Dyna, even after I've had that Dyna for over a year. Jumping on this, within 15 minutes I already feel more comfortable on this bike. I haven't done the drifting. I hear these are actually harder to drift and donut because they are a shorter wheelbase. I guess the longer the wheelbase, the easier those things are to sling, or to swing rather. But yeah, as far as just the straight up wheelies are concerned, this bike, I'd be confident saying a 1200cc Sportster would probably be the best bet for getting into the Harley game if you want just the easiest canvas to start out with. And then of course, Sportsters, much like the Dynas, you've got tons of aftermarket, so you can do the exhaust, the bars, the air intake, the chain conversion. You can do all that if you want to, but out of the gate, if I were to do it, I'd just get a 1200cc Sportster, get the seat, get the rear suspension, and with that and maybe a different handlebar setup, you'd probably be all set and be well on your way into rocking the wheelies. And I'm quite certain it'd be a lot easier than if you were to go with the Dyna route. Anyway, I'm gonna mess around a little bit longer here, have some fun, but there you have it. That's just my thoughts, my personal opinion. Take it or leave it for what you will. And so if you're debating Sportster versus Dyna, you know, maybe you just happen to find the right Sportster, or maybe the Sportster budget is a little closer to what you're looking for. There's a lot of pros to going the Sportster route over the Dyna. But again, it's personal preference. Do whatever floats your boat, you know, different strokes for different folks. All right, you guys, like and subscribe if you dig it. I appreciate the support. You can hit me on Instagram at John's Moto Garage, and we'll catch you on the next one. Adios. Nos vemos.